As I started to like dream bigger and want to create a larger, longer, more sustainable business, my mindset had to shift from just this is fun and this is my passion to this is real.
Hey everyone, do you think entrepreneurship is for everybody? Or do some people just need to be employed? Leave a comment below what you think. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you think you should be an entrepreneur? And most importantly, do you think everyone could or should be an entrepreneur? Or are some people just better employees and team members? Leave that in the comments below. Hi, I'm John Timmerman, and I started waking up at 5 a.m. Who just am I?
Yeah, who are you? Because I'm Rob Shogun, and I just ordered a case of pumpkin spice poopery.
Who?
If you don't know what that is, you better Google it and get yours before it's sold out.
And we are the co-founders of the No Bull Company, presenting No Bull 2020 2.0, 2021's most badass conference. And we're coming to you from inside Syracuse Studios. Syracuse is Syracuse's newest co-working space, combining creativity, community, and comfort. Check them out at Syracuse.com. Rob, a quick question for you.
John?
Do you think everyone should be an entrepreneur or could be an entrepreneur?
No.
No. Elaborate a little bit. So what type of person do you think is just not born and bred to be an entrepreneur or couldn't become one, shouldn't become one?
Well, I think anybody could, but I think there's people out there that just love the 9 to 5, right? Like, hey, I've got my job, I've got my family. When I punch out at 5 o'clock, I just want to go home and I don't want to think about a damn thing when I get there, right?
Yeah.
I just want to do my thing, spend time with my family, go to the gym, work out, do something fun, go play golf, whatever that is. But I don't want to worry about taking things home with me.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. I agree. I totally agree. In fact, my brother is one of those people. You know, when I first started Good Monster, I remember, you know, I was all into it, super crazy about it. You know, I lived and breathed it. And my brother was like, man, I'd never be, I don't even want to become an entrepreneur. I can't imagine what made you want to do that. He's like, I just want to go to work, do a good job, you have fun, what I'm doing, leave, and then go ride my bike and do everything that I want to do, spend time with my family, like not even think about work.
Right.
He's like, I just never want to be an entrepreneur. So I completely agree.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you could be, and we'll get into this into the show. I mean, like, if you can find a good job, so one that pays you well, because you still need the money to be able to afford to do some of those things.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can do that and your boss isn't a dick, like we've talked about in the past shows, compensated, vacation time and all that, and you can punch out at 5 and leave it there, God bless.
More power to you. And to be honest, like I'm a terrible employee. Like that's a fault of mine, to be honest with you. Like I just have a hard time. I don't know, hard time with authority. Like it.
Yep.
It just what I don't know where that stems from, but like I just was a bad employee. Like I'll say it, I admit it, and I'm not proud of it, to be honest with you. But also, Good Monster and our companies wouldn't exist without good team members and employees. So if everyone was meant to be an entrepreneur, I'd be out of business, to be honest with you. So anyways, so today's show, if you haven't figured it out, is about entrepreneurship. Is it for you? Why building a business is not for everyone. And we have a very special guest who has experience on both sides, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, and being a part of what looks like an amazing team. And Tiffany Cagwin has been so generous enough to spend a few minutes with us today. We'll meet her in just a moment. First, I want to give you a little introduction to Tiffany. So Tiffany, I've known Tiffany, you know, distantly through some friends. She's a great, beautiful woman. She's had a great business, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And she's now working for an amazing company, which I have personally looked into for my businesses. But Tiffany, she's a people operations manager at Shogun, a fully remote global tech company. Before her journey into the world of remote operations, she was busy growing a thriving yoga community in Syracuse. And by thriving, I mean thriving. She founded O Yoga Studios in 2011 and grew it from a tiny one-room studio into a multi-location operation with a staff of 75 people before selling it in 2019. She also co-founded Nostalgia Chocolates, a local bean-to-bar artisan chocolate company, with her husband Tyler in 2018, which is growing steadily. And by the way, the chocolate is amazing. She's passionate about wellness and uses that passion to help people thrive in their work / life. She's become an advocate for remote work and is an active part of ongoing conversation about how to make working from home productive, rewarding, and sustainable. Buzz Nation, please welcome Tiffany Cagwin.
Hi.
Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. We're going to get into some great conversation about work and life and business and how to juggle it all. Who's meant to be an entrepreneur, who's not. Maybe there's some seasons. But before we do so, now is the time when we all cheers, including Buzz Nation, to life, love, lots of laughter, and always secretly wondering if purified bottled water is actually purified. Nobody knows. Cheers, everybody. Shout out to our co-founder, Al Kutri, for coming up with our cheers. He's hilarious.
I love that.
So Tiffany, you did a very brief bio, right? But I want to dive right in because, you know, I know of O Yoga. I've been to O Yoga. My wife has been to O Yoga and taken some of your O Yoga classes, your classes there. And can you give us a little brief into the journey to starting that yoga practice?
Sure. I mean, my yoga practice itself, I started over 20 years ago. So yoga had just always been a part of my life. It was my healing practice, my sanity practice. It kept my mind and body well, and I loved it. And so I found that while I was working, every spare minute that I wasn't at work, I was studying and learning yoga. And that was just my intent, was to have it be that for myself and that part of my life. I did share it with everybody, like everyone at work knew me as the yoga person because that's what I talked about. At the time, I was on a path of higher ed administration.
Okay.
And that I really saw as, at that point, that was going to be my career. I was working on a higher ed master's when I was at Syracuse University, and I was the assistant director of financial aid at the law school there. And I was just sort of planning on climbing the ladder in academia and, I don't know, being a dean or something. That was sort of my path. I moved to Boston for a job at Suffolk Law School. And during that time, like, just got thrown into the yoga scene in Boston. I mean, it was, prior to that, I'd had to rely on home practice because I had never been in a yoga studio. I had never even seen a yoga studio. I just practiced at home and studied at home. Went to Boston, there was like yoga on every corner and the world's best teachers and amazing classes and things like hip hop yoga and things that you can't even imagine, like go with yoga, but it was amazing. So fast forward, I needed to return to Syracuse for personal reasons and started trying to figure out, like, you know, where am I going to practice yoga? I can't imagine after being in Boston how I am going to live without this yoga community and these teachers in the studio. And I was sort of complaining about it. I'll be honest. I was complaining about moving back to Syracuse. I was being really mopey about it. And I remember vividly being at a party with a bunch of people from the College of Architecture at Syracuse. And I was complaining about the yoga scene. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Where am I going to practice? And they were like, well, you know what? Be part of the solution. You know, you can keep complaining about it. Or if you think you have something to offer Syracuse or Syracuse is lacking, then you do it. Why don't you bring it? And I was like, oh, well, yeah. I guess. So that was really what propelled the journey into owning the studio. It didn't come from a desire to be an entrepreneur. It came from a desire to see a yoga scene happening in Syracuse, selfishly for myself, is how it started, you know? Yeah.
So it didn't exist. You felt the need to create it because people wanted it.
Yeah.
You know, there was a need, not only for yourself, like you needed it, but other people also were like, yes.
Yeah.
You know,
When I
let's do that.
started to like run the idea by people, I was like, well, if I did this, would you come? And everybody was like, yes, please. So I started, it happened pretty rapidly. I started looking at spaces, knew definitively I wanted to be downtown in Armory when I started. I just had this vision of people walking around with yoga mats and cool cafes starting to pop up. And it was just this scene that unfolded in my mind. And at the time, people told me I was crazy. They were like, Armory is the worst. Like, you can't go there. There's no parking. No one's going to walk around. I was like, no, you'll see.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was the right choice. And we just took off. So
describe you as the owner of O Yoga. I mean, maybe there's a story arc there, right? So, so 2011 so 8 years, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably a story arc of Tiffany as the founder and owner of O Yoga. Where did you start? You know, your emotion, your personality, your viewpoint on it, and what happened over 8 years? Like where did it go?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So one thing I failed to mention is that while I was in Boston, I had switched master's programs and was working on an MBA. So during that time when I was in Boston at Suffolk, I loved the MBA program. I ended up only doing a year because I came back to Syracuse and started the business. But I think that did sort of give me the foundation of starting to think through the lens of owning a business and what that might look like. And I felt somewhat a little bit confident starting a small business. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, but so I'd say at the beginning, I had like, I had a little bit of like, well, let's see how this goes. You know, like I'm excited. I'm passionate about yoga. As soon as I started the wheels in motion and started putting word out there, the response from people just amped me up. I was so energized. People were so receptive and so excited about it that I was just on cloud nine. It was just like, I think for probably at least the first year, I was just like flying high. It just to me was like life couldn't get any better than that. I was in bare feet and yoga pants, working, living the dream.
What's not to love about that?
I know. I mean, I've come full circle. I've like managed to be in the same situation working for a company, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, it was really just exhilarating. One thing I would say during the journey, you know, coming full through the cycle is that as the business started to grow and, you know, at first it was just like, it was pretty low stakes. I was just sort of testing it out. So there was a lot of pressure. As I started to like dream bigger and want to create a larger, longer, more sustainable business, my mindset had to shift from just this is fun and this is my passion to this is real. I have people now who work for me who are counting on me. I have customers who really rely on this. I have to come up with some long-term plan. We had to find new spaces and build out new spaces. I was facing things I'd never faced before. And that's probably around then when the stress started, you know, I mean, it certainly was, you know, I would say like I came off of cloud nine after that. Once we started to expand, it was just a lot more responsibility. Not to say it wasn't fun. I can't imagine my life without that part of my life. Like the community that was built here and everything that followed, the people that are in my life now because of it, the lives I was able to touch, like absolutely incredible experience. But the disillusionment started to creep in a little, I would say, of entrepreneur like dream.
Yeah.
Maybe around like year 3, 4, I was like, oh, this is intense. I haven't taken a vacation in years. I can't ever not be accessible. I have constant, you know, I'd go to bed with pressure, wake up with pressure, enjoy it in between, but it was sort of like a pressure cooker the whole time.
Yeah.
And one thing I started to, for me with this business or that business, one thing I started to really contemplate during the middle part of that journey was reconciling with the fact that I sort of lost yoga as my healing practice and my escape. Because then it was my source of revenue and my livelihood. And I had to make decisions differently as a business owner, not just from a yogic perspective all the time. I tried to mesh the two. I really believed in that. Running a yoga business as a yogi, but you still have to make money. So,
So this is such an important point. In that time, did you ever lose passion for the your yoga practice, or did it just kind of get crowded out? Like, because you were in it so much, did you lose a little bit of that?
I would say I didn't lose it. It just became harder I would say more what you said, crowded out. It became harder I had to work a lot harder to be in my practice when I was practicing, and not, even to when I would go away and do studies with my teacher, I was always then thinking, how does that translate into what I'm going to bring to the business, instead of how is this a self journey, which is what yoga is. I often had to fight to come back to that, no, this is about me in this moment, not about how that's going to impact my teaching and my staff and the business and the clients. It was difficult. So in a way, it enhanced my yoga practice because it brought me up against a lot of challenges with it. Yeah.
That's such I just want to stick on that point for 1 second, because we have a lot of people that watch this show who they have a passion. So whether it be, I'm thinking of Nick, woodworking or painting or construction or anything that, they might be passionate about. And they're like, man, I want to turn this into a business. And my experience in this was when I was into fitness and a personal trainer, and the same thing happened to me, that, you lose the time to work out and work on your own fitness when all day long you're training other people from 5 a.m. in the morning until 9 p.m. at night. And that got crowded out. Same thing. I never lost passion for it necessarily, but I just lost the time to be able to do it freely. And this is something that will happen if you start a business, with the exception of, if you strike big somehow and you can charge an absorbent amount for your projects and you can do them at your leisure. There's a very small portion of people that are able to do that. But most people who are following their passion and trying to turn that into a business, which is a very stereotypical common thing, like, oh, you can turn your passion into revenue. Right. But you have to understand that if you do that, just like what you said, just like what I experienced, it will turn into a business, and you will be forced to keep your mind on the business for survival. Yep. And it will crowd out maybe what that passion is. Maybe it won't erase it, but it will crowd it out. So you have to just understand that could happen if your goal is to grow your business. So just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a trade-off for sure. I do think people looked at my life and they were like, man, you're living the dream. You get to do yoga all day long. Yeah. I'm like, well, actually I'm at my computer all day long.
Walk us through that, Tiffany, because I think, so people hear yoga studio, they hear, oh, it must be, like you said, you're living the dream, right? But, and I know there's other parts of your career that we want to talk with you about this morning. So before we jump into that second phase of adventure, walk us through real quickly the timeline, like what it looked like from start to finish. So we know that you went downtown Syracuse into Armory. How big was the building? How many years before you opened up a secondary space? Like, people hear that and they're like, oh, I could never do that. Walk them through the mental challenge, if there was one.
Sure.
Sounds like there was. Yeah. Of the building blocks of what it took from inception to sale. Because people are going to certainly find that interesting too. Like, holy cow, wait, she built this and she sold it? So if you could walk us through that real quickly, then we can move on to your next adventure.
Sure. So I was in Armory. That space was about 1,500 square feet. It it was basically a one-room space. There wasn't even a bathroom in there. We would cram about 40 people in to this tiny little space to practice. People had to wait in the hallway while other classes were going on. A lot of us that are like, a lot of people who have been part of it from the beginning, though, we all reminisce about that first space, because it was days. Yeah, we were just in it. Like, we were all mixed in together all the time. And I really never left. I just sort of lived there. But we were quickly outgrowing that. There was just, more demand for classes than I could accommodate. And I wanted to start doing things like, as I started to realize, so building block number one, like the first roadblock was, there wasn't a lot of teachers in Syracuse. So if this is going to continue, and I saw that it could, that was my first hurdle, was how do we start to enhance the offerings, and how do I train teachers, and how do I make space? I had all these amazing relationships with some of the world's best yoga teachers, and they were willing to come to Syracuse and teach workshops and run trainings. And, but I needed room for them to do that. So in order to offer all the things that needed to come next, I had to move. But I was, I was always very careful with my overhead and not taking on debt. So
smart.
Yeah. And that's one piece of advice, like, I give anybody who asks me, is like, if you can manage it, do it like grassroots, do it as you go, like bootstrap it, try to, as long as you can, go that way. So, started looking at spaces. Long story short, ended up further down West Fayette Street, in the Rock West building, on West Fayette still, but just about a mile down towards Geddes Street. Again, people told me I was crazy. They were like, "You're crazy. No one's going to come to the West Side. Nobody's going to come down there." And I was like, "No, they will. This is cool. Like, this is a cool industrial space." The landlord was willing to do the build out. We doubled the size. So I went to about 3,000 square feet. And with that, then had bathrooms, had 2 rooms that I could use. So we could run trainings, or we could have 2 classes going at the same time. So that really opened up a lot of possibility for growth. So we were there for a few years. In 2016, I started looking for a second location. That was because the hurdle I was running into then is I had accomplished having all these amazing teachers. We had run a few teacher trainings. We had incredible teachers, and I didn't have enough room for them to teach. So then they were very frustrated. And so I wanted to make more space for them to grow. I wanted them to continue to grow. So I started looking for a second location, and was approached by another yoga studio in town, Lotus Life. And the owner, Kim, was wanting to sell the studio. So instead of building out a new studio, I decided to take on that studio. So purchased that studio. That became a second location in DeWitt for O Yoga in 2016. And then I would say the last big piece is that the space in Rock West, we were just sort of outgrowing our usefulness there. Let me put it, I'll just put it nicely that way. Yeah, it wasn't working anymore.
Yeah.
And we just needed an upgrade. We needed a different location. So I started doing the build for that downtown studio in the Dietz. So worked with Matt Paulus, which was, in fact, that came full circle because, I had actually looked at that building before moving into Rock West, and I wanted to be in that building. But Paulus didn't own it at that point. His father-in-law did, and I wasn't a big enough tenant to cause the renovation that needed to happen. So had to walk away from that, but always felt like that was the spot for the studio. And then Matt came back and said, we want a studio in the building. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing timing. So built out that in 2018, which is a beautiful, beautiful space. And then sold the studio in 2019. Started that process. I came to I knew I wanted to around early 2019. And it took the full year to get through the sale process. But, and I could talk more about that if you want, but that was sort of the full circle.
Just maybe 60 seconds on that, which is, again, staying on this theme of story arc. what made you click like, yep, okay, time to get out? And, what was, this is maybe a selfish question, but what is one tip anybody should know about trying to sell a company? So like the two questions, what piqued that like, yep, it's going to happen. And then what's, one piece of advice, I guess, that you can give somebody trying to get out, trying to sell their company.
Sure. Well, from the beginning, one great piece of advice I got from the very first day I opened my business was from my accountant, who I've known, that's a long story, but I've known him my whole life. And I used to work for him. And he said to me, because he does a lot of small business, he manages a lot of small business accounts. And he said, I will give you one piece of advice. If this is not your forever business, you've got to know when it's time to go. And he said, every year I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to tell you where you're at, what you could sell the business for, and I'm going to ask you to evaluate it every year. He said, you don't want to wait till you're burned out. And so if it's not your forever thing, there will be a point, and it may be when you're at top, and it may be when you don't want to go, that's the right time to go. And I always thought of that. And so every year he'd check in with me. And for so many years, I was like, nope, not ready. And that year, 2018, when he checked in with me, he said, how are we feeling about it now? And I was like, we looked at the numbers. It was extremely profitable. I had hit all of my goals. I couldn't imagine what else I had like a burning desire to accomplish. It was very sustainable at that point. I knew it was going to continue. I knew the legacy would go on at that point. And I wanted my yoga practice back. And it just was very clear to me that it was like, I was ready. It was time. It was the right time. So.
Awesome.
Wow. That's amazing advice from your accountant. And I want his name. No, I'm just kidding.
Which is not typical.
That's great.
That's not how usually that rolls out.
Yeah. I second that. That's great that you had such a professional as a close friend to give you that advice, because it's very smart.
And what was the transition after that? So you had that idea. Okay, it's time. I'm good with it. I know what I want. I know what I don't want. And then what happens next?
Yeah, so that was a year journey during this. So luckily the sale process did take a while. It took, I got the offer that I accepted, I received in February of 2019, and we didn't close until the end of November 2019.
Wow.
So I had that whole year to do this, like, what now? What? Like, what do I do now? What am I going to, who's going to want to hire me? And what do I, what am I going to do? So I was just exploring. I just started having a lot of conversations with people. It made a lot of sense to me to stay in some sort of operations role after running a business for 8 years. I liked the framework aspect of it. I liked having my hand in strategy and oversight and a little of people ops and a little of business ops. And I could really handle like all the complexities of running a business. So I wanted to stay in operations in some way. And what was important to me was that if I wasn't similar, like John, you said in your intro, like you were a terrible employee because, you didn't want to like,
100%.
and I thought about that and I thought, well, I mean, that's not the case for me. I'm an excellent employee. But after creating O and having that culture and being so passionate and committed about something and to a team and to an end product, I needed to be able to have at least that opportunity to be that involved again. So
was it a level of creativity? Like, that's the first thing that popped into my head when you were talking is like, you had so much creativity with O, and you needed to have some of that,
Yeah. I mean, you want to feel like your ideas are heard, what you're doing matters. It's having an impact on the business or the team. And so it started to seem to me that a couple of things. One, that probably the startup world was going to be where I was going to feel the most fulfilled, is helping another business grow. It was a cool journey for me. I don't particularly want to be an entrepreneur again, but I'd love to help another one. I know I could help them get there. So that, is what I was looking for. And I had just gone down the rabbit hole of remote. Like I started seeing what was out there in terms of remote opportunities and what those companies were doing. And I was like all in. I couldn't get enough of it. I started talking to everybody I could that was in remote. And just felt like very passionately about that space and the access that provides to people and the flexibility for your life. So started to just look for the intersection of those two, remote, startup, what jobs are out there, and then came across Shogun.
And so here you are now at Shogun. Feel free to briefly describe, what they are, but describe your role there and why it's so fitting for those things that you were looking for, the creativity, obviously the remote aspect of it. And describe why it's the perfect fit for you as a previous entrepreneur.
Yeah. So Shogun, we do page builders for e-commerce sites. So they plug into like Shopify, those we have a page builder, and then we've launched a new robust front end product that's like a headless commerce product, which is really cool. That's our new thing. So first of all, I knew about Shogun because my husband's chocolate business, we are using Shopify, and trying to build that website was just like, you had to come in and help us, but
yeah.
I was like in over my head trying to build a website with Shopify. I had done Wix, I'd done Squarespace. Those were great. So I had known about Shogun. So they were on my radar just as a product. And then, so I was following them. And when I saw the job opening, my first job that I was hired for was just an operations manager overall. So at the time, the operations department was brand new. The two founders had really been running everything, and they decided they needed an ops team. So they had hired my boss first, and then 2 months later, she hired me. And, when her and I interviewed, what she thought was a good fit and what ended up being the perfect fit for me in that role was that the department was so new that she was like, I need somebody like you who has handled every part of the business. So it doesn't matter if I'm asking you to do legal or compliance or HR or events or, I'd run yoga retreats. They were looking to do an offsite. She's like, you're going to be able to do whatever I need help with. And I was like, yeah, I'm your girl. Like I can do it. So, and it was exciting to me. Like they were at, 40 some people at that point when I joined. We're at 100 people now as of today, and probably doubling by next year. I met the founders, and they were just so passionate about what they were building, making it an incredible, they wanted to be the best remote company in the world. When I talked to them and they told me that, I was like, yes, I want to be part of that. Like, I'm going to have an impact. I'm going to be able to help people show up remotely and have an incredible experience at this company. So I was all in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, my company's fully remote. And so I echo exactly what you're saying in the passion. And it's, if you can do it, if your business structure will allow you to do it, I can't stress, and I know you'll agree with me on this. I can't stress the amount of productivity, happiness, that your team will have, when travel time is gone and flexibility is there and time with your family is there, and just the benefits are, endless. The previous, we're scared to have our team remote because we're going to lose productivity and they're going to be watching Netflix all day. And it's just not, it doesn't exist if you have the right team members,
Right.
So that's amazing. I'm super happy for you. Super happy for Shogun. So before we round out, I know for a fact there's people out there that are watching that I want to start my own business. I want to start my own thing. I want that freedom. I want that flexibility. So, we've heard your story and heard how you were lucky enough to have a successful business, lucky and obviously worked very hard, but had all those people tell you this is something we want, and you got that great experience. Found out that, maybe the stress of it outweighed the, I guess the thrill maybe of building a business, and you started to sacrifice one of the most important things in your life, which was your practice and your yoga practice. So here you are, full circle now. You're at Shogun, super happy. using your entrepreneurial skills in, helping somebody else grow their business. So if there's somebody who's out there right now, and I know there are, deep down, they know being an entrepreneur freaks them out and they're totally scared in their gut, even if they might not admit it, they know maybe it's not the right decision, but everybody out there, social media, all the content that they're watching is telling them you need to be an entrepreneur. You need to chase your dreams. You need to turn your passion into profits and whatever else, taglines are out there. Can you just describe to them the level of satisfaction and happiness that you have now utilizing your creativity and your entrepreneurial skills, in a growing successful company working for somebody else? Can you sort of describe what they could potentially feel by not going down the entrepreneurial road?
Yeah, I can. I can tell you they'll sleep better at night. That's one thing.
Agreed.
Yeah, I sleep great. I work really hard. I'm so focused on my work. And then like what you guys were saying in the beginning, though, now I have this insane freedom, particularly on the weekends. That's the huge thing for me is I'm like, I actually don't think about work. I'm free to reset, to recharge, to like bring that passion back to work the next day. I think, my advice is I do see all that messaging out there. And I think it's unfortunate that, we've turned this idea that every passion you have, you've got to monetize, or you're somehow missing out or lacking, or you're not doing enough if you're not being one of those people who's just turning everything into a business. Like if you have a burning desire to do it, I fully support it. I wouldn't change anything about my path. I wouldn't change, having owned a business, but I don't think it's everything. I don't think it necessarily brings you all the fulfillment possible in life. So, I think I would never discourage someone from doing it. I think, you need to really think about some of the stuff we've talked about, the trade-offs and what you're willing to sacrifice for it. But I think, I also just don't necessarily believe that like what you do every day has to be your dharma, is what we call it in yoga, your life's purpose. Your life's purpose can be fulfilled outside of work. No one wants to work for, a horrible person or sell their soul for a company. So it's certainly worth it to find the right job that you like showing up to every day. But I'm able to pour my creativity, my passion into my work. I feel fulfilled. I'm making an impact, not only on the business, but on all the people's lives who work at Shogun, which feels good. But then I'm able to also have enough energy to shift the rest of my passion and creativity into other things in my life. I've gotten back to some of my creative pursuits. I'm taking better care of myself again. I'm spending more time with family. I'm cooking meals. Didn't do that the whole time I owned a business.
Yeah.
I never had time to cook a meal. Like, what is that?
Right.
So, I'm really in this place of like, I'm loving it. I'm loving this extra space that I have to show up, to fulfill purpose in other ways in my life.
Yeah.
And, for me, I was blessed. I got to have the best of both worlds. I got to, do the business owner experience, and it was, and of course we still own Nostalgia. So that's still in my life, which was part of also, I didn't mention that definitely was part of my like thought process of getting out of my business. I was like, can't do two, not having two businesses.
Stressed out with one, can't have
one's
two.
Enough. So Tyler, now's your turn. I'll support you. I just do the business and financial stuff for him. But it's enough. And I think you've just got to be honest about like, you've got to kind of tune out what you're seeing other people say you should do. Like, it's really about getting in touch with what's actually just going to make you the happiest.
Yeah.
And if that's having time at night to watch Netflix and that's what you want to do and you really want to have the freedom to binge and chill on the couch, then like own that and make space in your life for it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Such a great lesson. And, like you said, unfortunately, there's so much media out there. And I think it's actually changing that says, the only way to be successful is to be an entrepreneur. And I do think, hopefully on this show, we're trying to shed light on that. I do know that there's some other people, influencers or media that are sort of putting out that, entrepreneurship isn't the end all be all that maybe it was in the 2010s, early social media sort of, world where all this opportunity exploded. And so now everyone needs to start a business with everything.
Right.
So I thank you so much for sharing. It's going to help so many people out there, and so glad to hear that you're in a good place for a good company, working with a great team of people. I know what that's like, and I wish everyone could experience that, whatever end you're on, whether you're on the leader entrepreneurial side or you're part of the team that's ultimately supporting and leading that entrepreneur. It's a great environment to be in. So super happy for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for carving time out of your, without a doubt, busy day at Shogun. And I wish you all the success in the world.
Thanks. We are hiring, by the way. So if me talking about Shogun prompted anybody's interest,
where do they go?
Check us out. Just to our webpage, getshogun.com.
Getshogun.com?
Yep. Getshogun.com. We are growing rapidly and we need help. So,
all right, everyone, head over to getshogun.com and apply. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, Robert.
Johnny.
Looks like you got kicked out of the FaceTime thing, but that's okay. We're over here. So awesome show. So, one of our first guests back on the show, we had a few guests early on, but this is a super exciting new format of the show for us because we're going to have people on that are walking the walk, the topics that we're talking about. And hopefully moving into 2021 here, our topics are going to be right up there in some of the more important things involved in business and entrepreneurship and, tying into a little personal life as well. And we'll have some awesome, we'll call them experts, or experienced people in those particular topics.
Yeah. And if there's something that, we've not covered yet over the course of, almost a year now, that you want to hear, if you want us to find a guest or if you got a suggestion for a guest, just let us know. Reach out to John or myself, or drop us a note. Absolutely.
And everyone out there, don't forget, this podcast exists stemming from our annual events, No Bull 2020 2.0. So had obviously COVID rocked the world, pushed it back to April 8th, 2021. But that just allowed us to add more value. Gary Vaynerchuk, AJ Vaynerchuk, Constance Schwartz-Marini, a lineup of real business builders. Like these people are no joke. Super excited to now welcome Terica Lynn Smith to the lineup. Terica was actually homeless with her child for a period of time before she learned real estate, got her license, and now is a successful developer. She currently got a $14 million project going on, so she is going to rock the stage on that. So don't forget, head over to nobull2020.com, get your tickets. We have some new pricing, and it will be changing rapidly. So check it out as soon as you can. Thanks, everyone. All right. So as always, don't forget, we're back here Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Wherever you consume your content, video, or podcast. But until then, cheers to life and business. May you all prosper in both.
Cheers.